KeVon Singleton is a North Charleston native, a recent Morehouse graduate, a documentary filmmaker, and a current nonprofit director. Now he's looking to his next chapter in life. I talk one-on-one with KeVon for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. KeVon Singleton.
Yes, sir.
Welcome to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you. Feels good to be here.
Oh, I appreciate it greatly. I know that me and you were trying to get this interview together many years ago.
Yes, sir.
But now we're here through the grace of God.
Yes, sir.
And I know that you are a North Charleston native.
Yes, sir.
A recent Morehouse College graduate.
Yes, sir.
Where you majored in Bachelor's Africana Studies with a double minor in obviously political science and public history.
Yes, sir.
And historical preservation.
Yes, sir.
You're also a documentary filmmaker and an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
What's new? What's now in your world?
Currently, right now, I'm headed to Harvard Divinity School in the fall, and that's what's next for me. I think Morehouse definitely prepared me very well for what's next in my life, what's going on, and I'm just so thankful overall for the experience. I'm very thankful, the HBCU experience, and then also for my community here in Charleston that got me this far. So yeah, that's what's next.
What got you from Morehouse to Harvard?
Honestly, it was a lot of hard work, but I would say more importantly, it was the death of my father. My sophomore year at Morehouse College, in the spring of my sophomore year, my father passed, and that was a trying time for myself. And it was a time that I really had to lean and depend on God, not knowing exactly what way to go. And I found myself kind of at a standstill, not knowing what was next for me in my life. And through that time, I kind of accepted my calling a little bit. Understanding that what I was doing in my life was ministry, but more importantly, that there was a bigger role for ministry in my life. And so once I dealt with the death of my dad, I just kind of had to, like I said, just lean and depend on God, and that's kind of what got me here.
So, how do you look at ministry now versus when you were not in ministry?
So I wouldn't say I'm necessarily in ministry. I think ministry is more of what you practice. When I think of ministry, I think a lot of people say oh, we're in ministry because I preach, or I'm in ministry for that. But I think it's more so about what you do. I think that's what makes ministry. But the way I look at it prior to me understanding what I was doing versus the way I look at it now is in the beginning, growing up, when you hear the word ministry, of course you're thinking of someone who preaches.
Yes.
But now, as I've gotten older, I have a nonprofit organization and all these things, I now see ministry more so as a way of helping people, not necessarily preaching to them from a pulpit. And I think that's often something we see a lot that is stereotyped in the black church, is that ministry is something just preaching. But it's more so than just preaching. It's reaching out to people. It's helping people who aren't as fortunate as you are. Always making sure that you can be an aid to someone. And I think that's currently where I'm at in my life.
And what are those other stereotypes in ministry that you want to basically peel down and tell people about?
I think often, a lot of times in our churches, we have this stigma, if you will, that you have to come into church a certain type of way, you have to dress a certain type of way, you have to look a certain type of way to be accepted into church. And I think that's something that we as Christians, I'm speaking for myself, I'm not a Christian, but we as Christians, we have to kind of break down the stereotype. So it needs to be more inviting, not only to others who are not believers, but to other religions. We should all be able to worship or fellowship together, and just have a great experience, about bringing each other together. Because every religion, in a way, it perpetuates, serving others. And when we get away from that, when we look at the way we've been treating each other over this, especially I would say since the passing of Dr. King, so the past was that 55 years now. We completely went away from I think a lot of the aid to others. That now we're just we're focused so much on what's inside the church instead of focusing on reaching those who are outside. And I think that's been my biggest stereotype that I'm trying to dismantle, I would say.
And what aid are you giving to your community today?
So like I said, I have a nonprofit organization, the Charleston Equity Initiative. So I've actually, for the third year now, I'm launching the scholarship in the name of my father, the Michael D. Singleton Scholarship, which serves and how can I put it? It promotes to serve children who are less. they aren't. I'm sorry, I'm losing the word right now. But they aren't able to go to school necessarily on full rides. Right? These are kids who don't necessarily have the perfect GPA, but they still have the aspirations to go to college. My father used to always tell me, like, I wasn't a perfect student, but my dad was able to get a good job in Charleston, South Carolina, and I want to make sure that we allow other kids to also have opportunities here in Charleston, and so that's what the scholarship aims to kind of develop, and that's what we're doing here currently.
And what actually inspired you to go to college?
Honestly, my parents told me I had two options. They said either you're going to go in the military and find a good job, or you're going to go to school. So sitting in a house for me was never really an option. But I always knew from day one growing up, once I realized what college really was, I knew I wanted to go to college. And then more importantly, I grew up, my favorite movie was Drumline. I love Drumline with Nick Cannon. That was my favorite movie. But in Drumline, the school that they attend is the fictional Atlanta A&T College.
Yes.
And Atlanta A&T is not a real school. Right. And the closest thing to that would be Clark Atlanta, right. Spelman, and Morehouse, the AUC community. Yeah. And once I realized that, and I understood the story of Morehouse College, and I had a cousin who went there, Jerome Singleton Jr., who's actually a Paralympian hailing from South Carolina as well. He went to Morehouse, and I saw all the great things that Morehouse instilled in him and the great person that he is. And I said, man, I would love to be a Morehouse man, right? Like, I would love for those same characteristics to be instilled in me, and it just felt like the great thing to do.
What other characteristics do you have in yourself now that you've actually graduated from Morehouse?
I feel like the confidence. I think the number one thing is the confidence. I don't think that we often talk about, I'll put it like this. I think often when you leave the HBCU or you graduate from the HBCU, a lot of times you're seen as cocky. I think that is a stereotype that a lot of times people don't talk about. Like, oh man, this person's cocky, or they have a confidence about them. Well, I think that going to HBCU, especially I can speak for myself going to Morehouse, it instills a confidence in you that you really can do anything, that you can stand in any room. I remember when I first went to go visit at Harvard, I was part of the diversity and exploration program at Harvard Divinity School. I was sitting there, and I was like, before heading to Harvard, I was packing my bags, and I was like, man, I'm going to Harvard. It's an awakening moment. It's something that, like, oh man, this is happening. But after being there probably like 2 or 3 hours, like the Morehouse in me kind of kicked in. It was like, you're supposed to be here, right? They want to have you. That's why you're here. Yeah. And that's kind of what led me, like that confidence. That's what kind of keeps me grounded. Having the ability to walk in any room and not be afraid. Being able to have any conversation, being able to be well-rounded, well-spoken, well-read, the wells of Morehouse College, and I think that's what kind of inspires me to have hope and to keep going and feel like I can do anything coming out of Morehouse.
And how did you, as a gifted intellectual, were able to transcend those societal norms at Morehouse?
So I would say, so I went to a gifted and talented school from middle school and part of high school, Morehouse College Academy. So I've been identified as a gifted student since 2nd, 3rd grade, I believe, wherever it is in the state of South Carolina. And so for me, heading into Morehouse, at first it was a little challenging, right? Because you have to try to figure out, as gifted students, a lot of times, intellectually, we're gifted, but a lot of times socially we aren't. Because, a lot of times we grow up faster than our peers, things like that. And so for me, at first, it was definitely a little bit challenging. But then once I got to Morehouse, seeing students who are like you, not only in skin color, but the way they're thought, the process of which they were raised, all of these things, is a very liberating experience, if you will. And so going to Morehouse and seeing all these great men, past leaders and present leaders, who came from Morehouse, you want to break societal norms, right? Like, you're around people who have the opportunity. You're around people who are just great people, and it's like these are your role models. But not only role models, these are your brothers. And if you see your brother that's able to do all of these different things, it inspires you to do the same. And so I would say what inspired me to do just break societal norms was seeing my brothers who did it before me, my brothers who are doing it with me, and that's it. Like, it's kind of a thing to where you it kind of rubs off on you, right?
Yes.
It's almost like a cold, like if you're contagious, right? Like if someone has a cold and they come around you, now you got the cold. Right. That's how it feels. Like it's like the greatness. I don't want to say greatness. It sounds a little cocky, but like the greatness, if you will, yes. It rubs off on you. Yeah. Like you want to be a part of something bigger than you are, and I think that's what colleges like Morehouse and Spelman and HBCUs, and then any school that kind of identifies who you are. And I think that's the number one thing. Like, as long as you go to a place that identifies to who you are as an individual. So, HBCUs, and that might not be for everyone. However, for those who find those characteristics that the college represents, if they feel like that identifies with them, then that's a place that they should go, a place that they can feel nourished and they can grow and excel as an individual.
With all that you said, Mr. KeVon,
yes, sir.
How were you not allowed, what didn't allow you to become a statistic?
Honestly, I would say my community. I actually had my graduation party on Saturday, and I don't even remember this moment, but at one point I was in 4th grade. I had a teacher by the name of Marcella Whaley at Pepper Hill Elementary School. And Miss Whaley told me, she said, we were in class, and she would always give us life lessons. For those that don't know, Pepper Hill Elementary is a Title I school in the city of North Charleston. And Miss Whaley, she said to me, she said to the class, she said, they're saying that they're preparing for more black men to be in jail than to be in college. Or they're preparing more beds for black men to be in jail. And she said to our class was mostly black, predominantly black. And we all said at the same time, or me and another student, we said, well, that's not us. We're going to college. Right. We have a plan for ourselves. True. And for me, like I said, it would be my community. It's my parents, my grandparents, my godparents, my aunts and uncles. I wasn't necessarily just raised by my parents. I've always spent time with my godparents. So, having the older people around me in my life, aunts and uncles, who kind of, I would say, kind of tutored me in life. Often, especially when I went to Morehouse, I found students, who weren't necessarily used to different things in life. But I was prepared because I had that community around me my whole life. Like I said, it was never just my parents. It was never just my grandparents. I had everyone around me who kind of poured into me in several different ways, and that's what kind of turned me to who I am.
Wow. So now that you have this degree, Mr. Singleton, how do you make it the community's degree?
You make it the community degree by educating the community, I think. I think it's by giving back to the community. I would never be who I am today if it wasn't for Charleston, or the Low Country itself, and especially North Charleston. This degree is not my degree. I don't care what anybody says. There's no such thing as a self-made person. However, we have the ability to pour back into those who poured into us. And even though I necessarily can't pour into everyone, I'm going to try my best to pour into those who are coming up underneath me, to make sure that they have the tools necessary to succeed. I haven't been in the Charleston County School since I graduated from 5th grade. Right. But I want to make sure that other kids have that experience. Because of, I hate to say it like this, but because sometimes of the lack of trying to put it in good words, the lack of good quality schools, I would say, in my area, I had to leave Charleston County, in middle school, because the schools, I don't think they were, able to necessarily challenge me in a way for me to succeed. They weren't able to prepare me necessarily in a great way. And so, I kind of left to be challenged at another school. And so I hope other kids never have to do that. Doing that, I lost, I had to leave behind great childhood friends. Thankfully, due to social media, we kind of kept in touch. Yeah. But, I didn't have that same experience. I didn't get to go to my neighborhood school, which would be stalled. Like I didn't have that opportunity, just because of the way that the school districts now are set up, in lack of care and lack of funding. And so for me, I just want to make sure that no kid has to do that again. I want to make sure that if kids want to go to the neighborhood school, if they want to be around their friends, they can do that and still receive a great quality education. And so, that's my goal.
Who's challenging you now?
Who's challenging me?
Stay on your feet and stay on your toes.
I would honestly say I have 2 nephews who are coming up, 4 and 3. They'll be 4 and 3 this year, or one turning 4, the other one's turning 3 in August. And that's who's challenging me right now to stay on my feet. to make sure I prepare a better world for them. And then even more so, I have some other nephews, well, little cousins, if you will, and they go to school, and every day, they're coming home telling me a story, or I hop on the phone and talk to them. They tell me a story, and so making sure that the world's a better place for them. We have a lot of things going on in this world, whether it's gun violence, poverty. We have so many different things, and to make sure that they don't have to know that pain, that agony. And so that's kind of challenging me.
Speaking of which, at Harvard,
Yes, sir.
what type of state of mind will you have when you're surrounded by people who are different and have different, mindsets like you?
Yes, sir. I don't know, man. It's. I think I'm going in there. I want to remain who I am. Remain to see things from a Africana studies point of view perspective. Making sure I carry my authentic self into that environment. But more so than that, I'm very open to going to a school like Harvard. As they say, they're the most pluralistic university in the world, and I think that is something great. Being around people who aren't like you, who don't think like you, it allows you to become a well-rounded individual. Because the city of North Charleston is not all black, it's not all African American, right? There's people of different communities, and how can I best serve those people if I don't know who they are, if I can't identify or necessarily relate to their experiences? So going to a school like Harvard, we have people from different socioeconomic backgrounds, different races, different sexualities. It'll help you better identify and understand, what these people, what their struggles are, what they're going through, and who they are. What is their story? How have them as a people, how have they gotten this far? And I think that's my goal. That's what I'm looking forward to.
How would you put your life into a documentary?
If I had to tell a story of myself, man, that's different. I never heard anyone ask me that one. I like that. I like that. I really do like that.
Thank you.
I'm gonna think about that. So how would I tell my story through a documentary film? Honestly, I would probably start the turning point for me. And the turning point for myself would definitely have to be going to First Baptist School of Charleston. Great school. I learned so much, but also with learning so much, I realized that the kids and I were completely different. Going to a private school was definitely it was a culture shock. It was a different experience altogether. But I learned so much because the kids were not like me at all. We had completely different upbringings. Sometimes they wouldn't understand how insensitive some of the remarks they would make and things like that. So I think that right there is where I would start at. I would probably make that the pinnacle of my life, because that's when I realized that change is necessary, and that it wasn't that racism wasn't over, that prejudice wasn't over. Like, it didn't stop in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s. That was an ongoing issue for children in my generation. And so I guess that would probably be the pinnacle of my film, and kind of how I would shape the rest of it. That's made me want to go to Morehouse. That's what really made me identify that hey, I need to start this nonprofit. I need to help kids who don't necessarily have the willpower that I do. I think the reason that I never even complained to my parents about it, because I wanted to go to First Baptist, right? I wanted to go play for Coach Johnny Waters, and I wanted to get a Christian education with a academic perspective, or academic excellence with a Christian perspective, as they say. But that's kind of how I would shape it. Just because if it wasn't for First Baptist, and even though I probably mentioned something that most people would say, oh, that's terrible, the culture has changed around there. And then even more importantly, if it wasn't for First Baptist, I wouldn't be who I am. It wasn't for teachers like Dr. Blaylock, so many of them, honestly, like people who just helped shape me. And to this day, I'm forever indebted to what First Baptist taught me, the qualities it instilled in me, just as a human being. I get that Christian education from the way it definitely helped shape me in a huge way.
What is something that you've learned about nonprofit now that you have it that you didn't know before?
I would say I can't really say I have an answer to that, really, because I did a lot of research prior to going into the nonprofit field, really. And so I would say, man, that's a tough question. Because like I said, I did a lot of research. I've always had, I was always involved with some sort of nonprofit. I was involved with the Bull Fair in the 12th grade. And so, I kind of knew, how nonprofits should operate. But I'd probably say what I didn't know. I didn't know that you could work for a nonprofit for a certain amount of years and get student loans forgiven. I can say that. I think that'd probably be the one thing I didn't know, and I just found that out a couple years ago. So I'll probably go with that one. I'll probably go with it. That's not really like a huge one, but it's probably about the only one I could think of off the top of my head.
And with all the social inequities in the world right now, Mr. Singleton, how do you make sure that you're not lost but actually found in this world?
That's my quote. I think you're pulling from right there. So I would say make sure my voice is heard. I think often kids get very lost, and not even kids, adults, people, we get lost in the world because there's so much things, like you said, so much going on, and we don't make sure our voice is heard. We're often taken back by all the issues that are going on instead of voicing our opinions. And one thing about me, I'm a very opinionated person. And I understand that everyone has an opinion, and my opinion does not outweigh anybody else's. But I'm always grounded in who I am. And I think if you remain grounded in who you are, remain grounded in your morals and your ideals, then nothing can really take you away. Nothing can shape you, redefine you, and that's kind of where I'm at. And that's how I stand up and not get lost. Make sure my voice is heard. Then also stay strong, stay true to who I am, stay true to my faith. Daily devotions, prayers, all that good stuff. So yes, sir.
So how do you keep that voice going in the next 5 to 10 years?
So headed to Harvard. Of course, like I said in the beginning, I'm going to make sure I stay active with my nonprofit, making sure that we still do some events, working on a benefit concert, things like that. So make sure that we keep up with what we have going on.
Sure.
But then also come back home and getting involved with whether it be local politics or whatever's going on at the time. Just kind of making sure I stay in the community, making sure that I remain to who I am.
KeVon Singleton, thank you so much for your time, and again, welcome to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.